I'm a somatic leadership coach, so I coach adults with me that the horses were sent here to help us. And then the universe sent Pete.
To translate.
Yeah. Every behavior is a message.
And it just bit me right here. Like that was the kind of like level I was like struggling. Okay, so let's dive in. So would you like to share your experiences with working with Pete?
I met Pete, I'll have to count back the years because COVID got in the way, right? And was in the middle of it all. I want to say it might have been 2015, 2016 as well. He was coming to Maine a couple of times, once or twice a year. And he was working with, I have an equine dentist, and he was working with the equine dentist's wife, and she was bringing people to their barn. And he kind of became all the rage here in New England. And so everybody kept going to see him. And I started by just going to visit an open clinic and participate. And it was very interesting for me right in the beginning because his way, I'm a somatic leadership coach, so I coach adults, but my unique selling perspective is I use the horses to partner with. And what I do for humans, Pete does for horses. So understanding his way, no, we can't bark. Sorry, hopefully you can cut that out. Understanding his way kind of paralleled with what I was doing anyhow for humans. And so I caught on very quickly to the nature and the concept of the idea on like, how does it feel here? And I was sold right away. You know, I think at the end of our open clinic, they were like, oh, who wants to enter a deepening and who wants to do more? And I was like, right away, like, sign me up, you know? And it was also interesting at that time too, to see my other horse friends and who was ready for Pete's knowledge and who wasn't, you know, because I remember one of my close horse friends that I went with, and she was like, she brought her horse and everything, and she was not happy, and she left, and she was just closed-minded and not ready to look inside of herself about what was happening with her relationship with the horse. And so that translated to Pete not offering anything of value, which was an interesting observation for me to make from the outside. But I've, over the years, and just to kind of touch point on that, I've worked with many number of horsemen in the horse world, international people. I'm an old school natural horsemanship Ray Hunt student originally, Buck Brannaman, some of those bigger names, and none quite like Pete. You know, they all claim to know the way to the horse, and to be doing good for the horse. And I agree, just like Pete will, I'm sure, in some aspects that they are doing good for the horse and that they do know certain ways to the horse, but not as well-rounded and not in such a larger scale of how Pete does. Pete really changed my life and my world in terms of horsemanship, because I thought I was doing good for the horse. And then he kind of woke me up to different aspects of that.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. Love to hear all of this.
I did enter into his deepening right before COVID 2018. We were able to organize the first meeting, and then COVID hit. So we had a year or two off. And then we've just come back to like our second, third, and fourth, just happened in the past 15 months. So I'm still deep in, if you will. And it's a beautiful thing. Every time we get together, it opens more for me. I connect more with my own personal understanding. I connect more with the horse. Yeah.
Okay. Is there some specific memory that comes to your mind, some kind of turning point, or just any kind of like experience that has popped out?
You know, I think I can't say that there's any one experience that stood out more than another, because I feel like every experience, things open and things close along the way. And they're usually fairly profound. I think some, you know, I look back to like my third deepening meeting, and my take-home message that time was really subtle. And my take-home message for myself was in the idea of, I'm a perfectionist. I'm an always like do more, want more. And my take home message at that time was like, be okay with less. And so it was such a subtle shift. And I would have in the beginning might have said, oh, not a lot is happening, not a lot of movement is happening, but it really was profound in the end when I left, because it was that opportunity for me to not look for all of the big grander gestures and changes, and to like understand that I don't always have to be on, and I don't always have to be doing so much and be so busy, if you will. So I can't say that there's any one turning point. Every single time I've been together with Piet and the horses, it's been special in its own way, and there's been huge eye-opening take-home moments. But an overarching thing that I take with me in regards to working with Piet and is that it always feels good, even when it's stuff that doesn't feel good, even when there's topics coming up or things coming up inside that don't feel good, it still feels good with Piet. And I correlate it to one of my first horse trainers one time. She was very like military style. And she used to say, oh, if I'm not talking, you're doing it right. And then like when you were doing it wrong, she would always be kind of, barking orders at you about how to fix and how to change and how to do differently. He is not like that. Every word that he gives, there's a kindness and there's a softness and there's a gentleness that not only does he want you to offer that sensitivity to the horse, but he also offers it to you, human to human. And so I'm getting teary-eyed. I don't want to cry. We might have to pause for a minute now.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so like that in a lifetime where not everything has always felt great, even when you're like what I call in the weeds and you're working through your stuff, even with Piet, it still feels good. And so that's really important to me.
Yeah, I can totally relate. It has been yeah, he's on a pretty spectacular mission. So much like beautiful, positive energy. And even though the difficulties may not, the difficulties are there and the challenges, but that someone is there with you in those difficulties, like with that kind of like kindness and presence, and like with you in those, that's really special.
Yeah, he's really a partner in that. And if anything, I'm sold, I'm sold in his mission, and I want to be a partner with Piet, with you, with the rest of the community to really share that, because from a horse perspective and in the horse world, it's needed, but even from just a humanity perspective, it's needed. Yes. And so I'm one kind of like Piet, that I feel like the way to the people is through the horses. And so that's fine too. But on the same note, like we can all be better for the interactions that we can take in our personal relationships as well.
You're talking like I can notice that you're like a very much a professional yourself, that you like notice certain things, and you sound like you really, it hits you deep, and you can like fully receive a lot of that he has to offer.
It absolutely does. And that just goes back to like what we were saying originally, is like not everybody's ready for it yet. And so like there's that understanding that like, okay, maybe there are people that aren't ready, but I can tell you, and I'm sure Piet knows, and you do too, because this is the work that you're doing, there's a whole world out there of people that are ready, that just maybe have not heard, or just haven't caught on yet and haven't got the message yet. So it's a great thing to be doing this, to bring that to those people.
Exactly, you're so on point. So okay, let's talk about those people who are ready, who are just haven't heard of him yet. I just so remember when I was that person, and like it hit pretty quickly, pretty hard when I found this connection and these teachings and this way of being. But my question to you is that to that kind of person who is not yet aware about Piet and his teachings, how would you describe his way of working?
They're really in the complete and full essence. It's not something you can really put a lot of words to. It's an experience. It's experiential. It's profound. It not only changed my way with horses, but it changed my way of being as a person as well. And so it's really hard to like just pinpoint, though, like an amazing word that describes it, right? Because it's beyond words. in some senses. And so what I would say to somebody else out there that maybe like has heard the name but doesn't know is like, you got to try it out for yourself. You got to see for yourself. And, you know, that's how you'll know. And that, you know, and only then will you know.
That's good. It's well put. It's like so personal. I think like there is so many different cases, so many people, and everyone has like their own kind of process. It's pretty individual process
Yeah.
that's happening there with Piet.
Yeah, there's nothing you know, and yet at the same time, there's nothing like canned about it, like nothing cookie cutter about it that makes it like and I think that that's Piet's struggle too, that makes it like a standardized, you can write it in a book, step-by-step instruction, you know. And so it really is that experience. And that's really, and you know, then I think of the idea of like life being made up of moments. And, you know, Piet really bringing those moments to the person and the horse. There are those concepts that like are, one might consider repetitive or like you do kind of over again, but really that's to build that muscle. That's that exercise and that's that practice to build that muscle. Because I can tell you when I get in there with the horse and Piet's watching, you know, sometimes I'm like just two in my head, and it takes time, it takes repetition to get into my body and to intuitively connect with the horse. And so, you know, I made a I journaled the other day knowing that you and I were going to be coming together, and I thought to myself, like, what's important for me to say and about how I feel about Piet and about the work with Piet and working with the horses. And the only thing I really kind of could come up with is to really say to you that like Piet knows the way to the horse. Not only does Piet know the way to the human, but Piet knows the way to the horse. And that's really important because there's so many people out there in the world saying, you know, they know how to get to the horse and they care for the horse. But it's not until after working with 10 other people for 15 years that I finally worked with Piet, and it was completely different. And so that's where I feel like there's going to be people like me who have done the years in thinking that they're working with these people that are great and these people that are opening things for them. And they were great experiences. I don't discredit any of them. I took valuable things from each of them. But in my lifetime, it was appropriate and ready to had stepped into the work with Piet. And that's where I want to be. In fact, when he's not here, because I'm in the US, when he's not here, there's a huge, and we said this to him, there's like a huge gap, right, of not working with him in between. Like right now I see him in March and I see him in September. And those months in between, we're like, what do we do? Oh my God. So yeah. And I don't want it to go away. And it really also too, I think something that's important to touch upon is working with Piet's not a riding program, you know? And so I think that a lot of people come in and they have like those misconceptions of like, I want to further my riding with my horse. And so that is a big question that has come up in our groups. Like there are aspects of like, how does this translate to being on the back of a horse, and how do we care for the horse just as much when we're riding? And I think at one time there was a path to open that. And maybe there will be again in the future, but really also what opened for me in it is that I don't always, I started to question, do I want to be on the back of my horse? Do I need to ride my horse? If I can be in partnership with my horse in this way, and my horse feels safe and wants to be with me, you know, is it necessary to ride? Like it's building upon a relationship that I have with my horse that I never knew existed. And so that's bigger for me than even just riding.
What in your view would be like the potential in Piet's work? Like what is possible? What kind of benefits are there for people who open up for this and take on this journey?
Back to the main kind of underlying premise is the way to the horse. The benefit is the way to the horse. That's all I like when I thought about it and I journaled, is all I kept coming back to was he knows the way to the horse. Then there's all these like little benefits that you realize in hindsight, you realize in reflection, you realize after the fact. You know, as a coach, I always look at like, who are you and where are you? And then who are you becoming and where are you going? And working with Piet, I've been able to gain tools in becoming who I'm becoming next. And opening up into that at kind of an accelerated pace because of the reflective aspects, because of the, for lack of a better word, and I don't know that this is the right word to apply to it, but for the personal development aspect. I wish that there were a better word to describe the opening that happens when you get the messages from Piet, but the only word I can think of right now is personal development. The growth in my relationships with myself, in my relationships with others, my relationship with the horse, kind of just a benefit to my broader understanding of the world at large. It's life-changing. Yeah. So for anybody who wants to change their life, come see Piet. I know that kind of sounds cliche, but that's what a cliche is made up of, right?
Well, I stand 100% there at the same spot.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it's the same. It was really a turnaround. Like when I think about my own history, I had been with horses since I was like intensively since I was 14 years old. And like I tried to communicate with horses. I really tried my best. I remember reading a magazine and they said like horses greet each other by blowing in their noses. And then I went to the pony I was taking care of, blew in its nose, and it just bit me right here. And like that was the kind of like level I was like struggling with, because if you don't know, you don't know. We really need like this kind of like good teachers. And the things that Piet opened up for me also, it was life changing, the things I learned with Piet's help through and from horses.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, the work with Piet, in that he's here for the horse. He's here to bring people to a better relationship, a better understanding, better communication with the horse. And he's really modest about how he helps the people. Like he doesn't, I don't feel, give himself that awareness or that credit of, I mean, I think he knows, of course he knows, but on the same note, that's not his focus. That's not what he highlights, is the help that the person's getting through the relationship with the horse. Instead, he just kind of, what I see is he kind of comes at it from this angle of like, this is for the horse, but really this is for us. I, like you, I for years tried to listen to my horses. And in some respects, I do listen to them. I do know what they're saying to me. And not only has this helped me, but it's helped my horses too. And it's changed who they are as well. Even I'll even associate like with my husband, I'm a horse woman. My husband is not a horse man, or at least I try to make him one, but even for him, like I even want him to have the experience with Piet, because as much as he's not a horseman, the aspect of looking at who you are and tapping into the self, my husband could use that as well, whether it's with the horse or not. So it's really, I think that's something that's kind of coming to me right now, is like the idea of this way with Piet is through the horse, but it's so much bigger than that.
Yes. Yes, and the horses are great teachers. They have been like a powerful force for a long time in people's lives. And they have so much more to give than just to be a vessel for, or not a vessel, but like something to work in the war or on the fields or whatever horses have been historically used for. They have they carry a lot of wisdom in them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some deeper philosophy somewhere along the world. Maybe even Piet shares it with me, that the horses were sent here to help us. And then the universe sent Piet
to translate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was missing out so much before Piet, like as a kid working with ponies or just brushing, and suddenly they just bite and kick or something like that. And I'm totally like, what happened now? It doesn't happen anymore. It hasn't happened for a long time. Since Piet, I'm not getting kicked or bitten.
Yeah, I can even say that the work with Pete and the work with the horses has even helped me, like, as a mom and parenting my child in the way that I approach mothering, every behavior is a message, and I don't think I knew that, or I understood that until I worked with Pete to understand, like, what is the horse trying to say here, and does it feel good here? And so, then I can translate that into my parenting as well. Like, what is my child trying to say here, and does it feel good here? And I want, as human beings, we have the same social instincts as the horses. We want, at the bottom line, the same thing: safety. Is this safe or isn't this safe? And so even in parenting with my son, I can now look at it from a different perspective to say, like, does he feel safe? Am I helping him feel safe? And if not, how can I shift the energy, the communication, the interaction, so that way he feels safe, and then we can get to the core of the message.
That you put it beautifully.